We are going to look at the basics then of a quadratic, okay, the parabola itself, and find all of the important features, which is telling which direction it opens, find the axis of symmetry, the vertex, y-intercept, and graph the function. And all these things we have done them in the previous pages. Okay, back in the first couple pages, actually. So, does it open up or down? How do we know? What letter are we looking for it opens up or down? When we talk about, so we're talking about a quadratic function, so we've got f of x equals ax squared plus bx plus c. Which letter are we looking for? Okay, whether it opens up or down. Okay. No. A. A tells us whether it opens up or down. Okay, so if A is positive, it opens up, and if A is negative, it opens down. So in this case, what's the value of A? Okay, A equals 1 here. All right. So since A equals 1, then which is greater than 0, it opens up. Okay. B, they want us to find the axis of symmetry. Well, this is written in standard form for the axis to find the axis of symmetry. So we go back to all our notes from before, and to find the axis of symmetry, we know that x is equal to, because it's always a line, negative b over 2a. Right? So we need to know what b is. So in this case, b is equal to negative 4. Okay. So we put in. So we have negative, b is negative 4 over 2 times 1. All right. So we get the opposite of negative 4, which is 4, divided by 2 is 2. So x equals 2 is our axis of symmetry. Okay. So how do I find the vertex then? What do we need to do to find the vertex? Well, this just told us when we found the axis of symmetry, we actually found what letter for the vertex? Okay, we found x, okay, which is h, isn't it? Okay, so how do I find k then, or how do I find the y value of the vertex once I know the x value of the vertex? Plug it in, that's right. So to find the y value there, or k, we just need to plug it in. So we've got 2 squared minus 4 times 2 plus 6. So 4 minus 8 plus 6 is 2. Nice. All right, so we have the vertex is the point 2, 2. All right, so we can go ahead and graph that point. All right, and what's the y-intercept? All right, okay, that's our value of c, which is 6. All right, so we put mark our y-intercept. So we've got a vertex and our y-intercept. We know that this line here cuts the graph in half, right? Okay, we don't draw it on there, but we know it does. Okay, so where's the next point I need to be able to graph this? If I've got my vertex here, my y-intercept is here, where's that third point I need to graph it? Okay, all right. We gotta go over, since we're 2 away from the y-intercept to the axis of symmetry, then we're going to go 2 the other way because it cuts the graph in half. So the graph is there then. Okay. All right, so there's all those important features that we need for graphing a parabola. So I'll give you a couple minutes to do letter B, all right, and letter C if you get to them, and then we'll do the quadratic formula. Okay, so in our discussion last week then about finding solutions to quadratic equations, we said there was 5 different ways you could find solutions. All right? The first one that we came up with usually is factoring, all right, and that we did on Friday. Okay? We said you can use a graph, we can use your table, right? And those are all viable options still. But then we had 2 others, a quadratic formula and completing the square. And so we're going to go back through and review using the quadratic formula to solve them. Because lots of times you could end up in situations where they don't come out with nice numbers, and factoring is not an option. Even the more complicated factoring is not an option. So we have to go to either quadratic formula or completing the square, and we'll do the quadratic formula today. So here is the quadratic formula, the way that it's normally seen. I don't usually use it that way. I like it a little bit different. I like to pull these things apart. So when I do it, I always do it as them separately. Negative b over 2a plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Now the reason I like to do it that way is because I have this important feature right here, which this is what? Axis of symmetry. All right, and then it tells me that when I'm on the x-axis then, from the axis of symmetry, from that x value, I just need to go to the right, whatever this value is, and to the left, or whatever this value is, and then I have my zeros. Right? And it's okay this way, right? It works just fine. I prefer to do it this way, and a lot of that is about by simplifying. It makes things simplifying easier for me when it's written in this form also. All right, so we have the function 2x squared minus 16x plus 27, and they want us to find the zeros and use the quadratic formula. So the first thing that I always want to do is identify the values of a, b, and c. So when I plug them into the formula, I've got them, so I'm not guessing. All right, so in this case, a is 2, b is negative 16, and c is 27. All right. All right, so we plug them in, so we say x equals, because we're trying to find the x values where it equals 0. So we've got the opposite of negative 16 over 2 times 2. So negative b over 2 times a, plus or minus. Now this is where a spot where it gets people in trouble is whenever b is negative, sometimes we don't put it in correctly. So whenever b is negative, make sure that you put negative 16 squared. Make sure you put that number in parentheses so that you make sure that when you put it in your calculator, you actually get it right. And this fraction bar is underneath the whole thing. So it's not the square root of the whole fraction, it's the square root of the numerator divided by the denominator. Then we simplify. Two negatives make a positive. And then I'm going to put the whole numerator, I don't want to use the square root, I'm just going to type that in. 16 squared. Because I want to just know that number itself, first of all. And my calculator's messed up. All right, so somebody's going to have to help me out. What do we get when we square 16 and subtract 4 times 2 times 27. 40? Okay. All right, so we get x equals 4 plus or minus. Now, here's where we started the class today. Simplifying radicals. All right. So we are not going to write it as a decimal. We're going to simplify it and keep it in radical form. So what's the biggest one of those squares that goes into 40? Okay, 4 does. So it's the square root of 4 times 10, and the square root of 4 is, okay, so this is 2 square roots of 10 over 4. And then we're going to simplify this fraction. So we get 4 plus or minus the square root of 10 over 2 would be our correct answer. Maybe. Seriously? Come on. There we go. Okay. So identify A, B, and C. Plug them in and simplify. Now, is there a way you can check to see whether that's right or not? Not in my calculator because it's not working right at the moment. Okay, but I'll show you in a minute. All right, so I want you to do, just do letter A here. And while you're doing that, I'll see if I can get my calculator back working. Just a matter of plugging them in and simplifying. Now, let's look at a situation where we end up with this number here is going to be negative then, okay? And see if you can remember what to do in those situations. So we're going to end up with what's called complex zeros then. Oh, wait a minute, let me go back. Sorry. I want to show you how to check to see if these are right or not. Okay, so let's take that one we just got. We're just working on. So put x squared plus 3x minus 7 in your y equals on your calculator. Y equals x squared minus 3x, or excuse me, that's plus 3x, minus 7. And graph it. Okay, now we can see that this is definitely, these are not whole numbers, so trying to find the answer is a little bit trickier, all right? But we can check our answers, and so here's how we check our answers. Second trace. Oops, not second trace, just trace, sorry. Just trace, hit trace. Okay. All right, now we're going to type in this number here, okay? To see, we're going to type in both of them. There's two of them, remember. It's negative 3 halves plus square root of 37 over 2, and negative 3 halves minus square root of 37 over 2. So we hit trace, and we just start typing it in. So negative 3 divided by 2, and we'll do plus. And now here you're going to want to use the fraction bar if you have it. If not, you'll have to use parentheses. So if you have the fraction bar, we'll go alpha y equals, and we can make a fraction there. Oh, maybe it won't do it right here. All right, I guess it won't. So we'll do the square root of 37. Just make sure you close the parenthesis and divide by 2. All right, so it should look just like that. Square root, close the parenthesis, and divide by 2. All right, and you hit enter, and it'll take you to one of the zeros. Okay, and so then you can check the other one. Negative 3 divided by 2 minus square root 37 divided by 2. And then this will put you at the other 0. Now the thing is, one thing is that when you're checking that, is not always is it going to say 0 here. It might say 1e negative 10 or 11 or 12, okay? But basically it's a number that's really close to 0. You're going to pay more attention to not necessarily the number here, because if it doesn't say 0, you don't really pay much attention to that. But if you just look where the cursor is blinking, it's going to tell you, okay, it's right there. Okay? So you can use your calculator even to check those. Now, on the ones we're going to do now with the complex zero roots, these you can't check, because if they're complex, what does that mean? Anybody know what? What? It won't show up on the calculator. And the reason is because the graph of it is going to be above the x-axis, so there are no real zeros. All right, so here you're just trusting that you did it right. Okay. All right, so we'll do this one. So A is 4, B is 3, and C is 2. And the difference is when we're done, we're going to end up with a negative number under the radical. And so we just need a refresher on what we do with those. All right. So we plug in the numbers. And simplify it. Okay, so what is 9 minus 4 times 4 times 2? Negative 23, okay. All right, so what do I do when I have the square root of a negative number? What are we supposed to do there? Yep, we get I on the outside. So this is going to be negative 3/8 plus or minus. And now, whether you put the I in the front or the back doesn't really matter. So we'll put it in the back in this case. Square root of 23 over 8, and then I. And if we graph this, if I would put this in our calculator and graphed it, all right, we would see that it does not, or that it doesn't cross the x-axis anywhere. So then we know we're going to end up with an imaginary number. Okay? So the I can actually go here, or if you end up in a situation where you have to simplify it, and so let's say that instead it said negative 3/8 plus or minus 4 square root of 23 over 8. Now in this case, if you wanted to, you could put the I here or put the I at the end. Either one. Doesn't matter. It's up to you. Okay? They will both work. All right. So